The decision did not arrive with a speech, a ceremony, or a warning. It came with the quiet movement of a fountain pen across a single page. Minutes later, Camilla's remaining privileges had been erased. Her access codes were being cancelled, and King Charles was sitting alone beneath the weight of what he had done. The marriage remained. The protection did not. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles read the final paragraph twice. The Royal Household Separation Directive, a binding order removing delegated authority from a royal household member, waited beneath his hand. By signing it, the king stripped Camilla of access to protected jewelry, residences, funds, charitable trust decisions, ceremonial precedents, official correspondence, and the power to command crown employees. The order did not end their marriage or erase her public title. It did something colder. It separated the woman from the machinery that made her influence real. The monarch paused above the signature line and remembered every year he had defended her. He had endured criticism to keep Camilla beside him. Now the evidence had changed loyalty into danger. If he refused to act, he would be telling the crown that love mattered more than its rules. He was not only limiting his wife, he was admitting that his protection had allowed the boundary to blur. Camilla received the notice at Clarence's house without warning. Her private secretary entered without her folder, placed the envelope before her, and stepped back. She read the first page, gripped her chair, and asked, "Did he sign this himself?" The aide answered with a nod. She looked down again, though the words had already changed the room. Charles had acted after receiving a recovered recording, an altered trust schedule, and handwritten instructions linked to the Queen Elizabeth Memorial Collection. The collection was a protected group of royal objects, preserved for national use, not private control. Together, the materials suggested that Camilla had tried to move those assets into a structure loyal to household. Eleanor Wren carried the evidence into the palace. The former deputy private secretary had preserved copies after being ordered to destroy the originals, and her documented account made the package undeniable. As officials cancelled Camilla's access, a security officer removed her embossed card from a velvet case, cut it in half, and entered the action in a black ledger while she watched from the doorway. The signature had removed Camilla's power, but to understand why Charles was willing to wound his own marriage, the palace first had to confront the people trapped inside the decision. Behind the official language were 4 people facing 4 different kinds of loss. Charles feared that protecting his wife would destroy his credibility. Camilla believed decades of loyalty had been erased in one morning. William saw a threat to the future he would inherit. Anne saw a danger that should have been stopped years earlier. None of them entered the crisis without history, and none could leave it unchanged. Charles had spent years defending Camilla's place beside him, and now the directive felt like a confession. The king knew the public would not see only discipline. They would see judgment on his marriage, his instincts, and the trust he had placed in the woman beside him. Camilla faced a different terror. Her authority had never been automatic. It had been built slowly through acceptance, ceremony, and access. Losing those structures meant symbolic exile while still living beside the monarch. William received the confidential order before sunrise. The Prince of Wales, the title given to the sovereign's direct heir, read every page beside Catherine and closed the folder without triumph. She watched his face and warned that institutional victory could become family humiliation. Catherine reminded him that Camilla's fall would wound Charles as deeply as it protected the crown. William answered quietly that compassion could not restore authority once protected assets had been placed at risk. He understood the pain, but he would not deny the danger. Anne had seen that danger first. Months earlier, the Princess Royal noticed catalog numbers from the memorial collection appearing in papers outside the official archive. An audit, a formal review of records and decisions, was requested without accusation. She instructed the keeper to preserve drafts, access logs, and every altered schedule. When Anne brought the concern to Charles, he dismissed it as a disagreement between households. She left his study wounded, saying, "You are asking me to ignore the crown because the truth may hurt your home." He remembered those exact words even now. William entered Buckingham Palace and found his father beside an untouched breakfast tray. No aides waited nearby. He placed the directive on the table and said, "I will support the office, but today you need someone to support the man." Charles looked away before thanking him. Camilla called moments later. She insisted the evidence had been misread, but the conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Charles refused to argue and told her they would speak after the security review. His calmness hurt more than anger. Each of them carried a different wound into the crisis, but the first cut had been made weeks earlier, behind a closed Windsor door that one witness refused to forget. The crisis did not begin with a stolen jewel or a public confrontation. It began during a quiet planning meeting that was never supposed to become important. Charles left early. The doors remained closed. A revised document appeared before the remaining officials, and one instruction changed the atmosphere instantly. Those present would later remember the silence that followed, because everyone understood that a boundary had just been crossed. Camilla had called the Windsor session 6 weeks before the directive. The Queen Elizabeth Memorial Collection held jewelry, letters, portraits, and ceremonial objects reserved for exhibitions, national occasions, and future generations. A memorial trust was a legal structure created to preserve named property for a fixed purpose, not to let one person treat it as private wealth. Under its charter, no royal spouse could redirect those assets or place them under personal household control. Charles remained for the opening discussion, but a call from the Prime Minister drew him away. The king left, believing the meeting concerned routine administration. Moments later, Camilla produced a revised beneficiary schedule, naming the Queen's Heritage Circle as principal administrative custodian. The circle was a new private foundation, and the wording would give it control over selected assets without transferring formal ownership. Eleanor Wren studied the page and felt the danger immediately. The deputy private secretary told Camilla that the change would move decisions away from the Crown trustees, the officials legally responsible for protecting the collection. She replied that the monarchy needed a more flexible guardian and ordered Eleanor to circulate the schedule quietly. Eleanor refused to sign the circulation record. Camilla leaned closer and said, "Loyalty sometimes meant protecting the sovereign from unnecessary procedural conflict." The aide heard no advice in those words. She heard a warning. Her career, access, and reputation now depended on silence. A transcription device remained active after Charles left. It had been used to create catalog notes, but the full recording synchronized automatically to a secure Royal Archives server, the institution that preserves official royal records. The edited meeting summary omitted the crucial exchange. The backup did not. Camilla's recorded voice delivered the sentence that changed everything. Once the assets enter the circle, no future household can reverse the arrangement without our approval. Eleanor waited until the room emptied, photographed the altered schedule beside the original, and watched her first image blur because her hands were shaking. She took another, hid the unsigned copy in her handbag, and walked out without speaking. The point of no return. The Windsor recording proved what had been proposed, but the confrontation that followed would reveal how far Camilla was prepared to go to prevent Charles from hearing it. Charles did not summon a council, invite lawyers, or ask his aides to remain. He requested 1 room, 2 chairs, and complete privacy. Camilla entered expecting a dispute over paperwork. Instead, she found the altered schedule on the table and a recording device beside it. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the king pressed play, and her own voice filled the silence between them. Charles had chosen the audience room at Clarence House because this reckoning belonged to husband and wife. Buckingham Palace would have turned it into a hearing. Here, there were no advisors, lawyers, or officers inside. Protocol, the formal system that controls royal conduct, could not soften one word. The recording ended. Silence returned. Camilla watched him silently. Charles asked why she had tried to create an arrangement that could survive into William's reign. She answered that Elizabeth's legacy needed protection from restructuring. The king replied that preservation could not begin with secrecy or end with the crown losing control of its inheritance. What mattered was not only the assets. A hidden structure could force the future king to obey decisions made before he took the throne. Camilla's restraint broke. She accused Charles of believing officials who had never wanted her inside royal life. She reminded him of years they had survived together and demanded to know whether one disputed meeting erased everything she had done beside him. He pushed the revised schedule across the table. "Look at me and tell me you did not intend this to be permanent." Camilla reached for the page, but no denial came. Charles removed his glasses in tense silence. Her silence gave him the answer he feared. The king then placed a note beside the schedule. It ordered an aide to secure 2 trustee signatures before the prince's office becomes aware. Trustees were the people responsible for protecting the collection, and hiding the move from William made the plan look deliberate. Camilla admitted authorizing the wording, though she denied seeking wealth. She said she wanted to stop the future king's household from dismantling projects tied to her legacy. Camilla rose and a chair fell backward. Charles did not move. She steadied herself with her wedding ring hand on the table and asked whether he had chosen the monarchy over her. He answered, "You forced them into opposition. The dispute was never merely about jewels. It was about authority surviving beyond a sovereign's reign and binding an heir in secret." Camilla left believing negotiation remained possible. She did not know Anne, William, and the crown trustees were meeting. The marriage had reached its breaking point, but beyond the closed door, the monarchy was already calculating what survival would require. The most powerful meeting of the crisis contained no raised voices. Anne arrived with the audit. William carried the succession papers. The trustees brought the memorial charter. Charles entered last and found an empty chair reserved for him at the head of the table. Every document pointed toward the same conclusion. Yet no one wanted to be the person who spoke the words first. Charles sat without removing his coat. The crown trustees, the officials legally responsible for protecting royal assets, could not strip Camilla of her title or alter the marriage. They could, however, advise the king to end every authority connected to property, staff, residences, and trusts. Her access had never been ownership. It was power borrowed from his office, and borrowed power could be withdrawn. Anne placed the audit before her brother. The Princess Royal did not demand punishment. She told Charles she understood what the decision would cost, then softened her voice. "I am not asking you to stop loving her. I am asking you to stop giving love the keys." He looked at Anne for a long moment, knowing she had warned him before, and knowing he had chosen not to listen. William faced a harder question. A trustee asked whether the Prince of Wales supported complete removal. He refused to turn the meeting into personal revenge. William said he would not recommend sanctions against his father's wife, but he could not inherit obligations created without his knowledge. If the heritage circle remained connected to protected assets, the future king would reject it completely. The evidence then widened. Access logs showed 3 earlier attempts to move collection objects into temporary household custody. Each request used different wording, making the pattern easy to miss. Together, they suggested planning, not confusion. Charles then saw his own signature. Months earlier, he had approved a routine briefing paper containing a hidden clause that linked the memorial collection to Camilla's foundation. The king ran one finger beneath the sentence and closed the folder. "My failure to read this cannot become the monarchy's permanent weakness," he said. Sir Jonathan Vale explained the final danger. The senior trustee said partial restrictions would fail because Camilla's household connections crossed several royal offices. Loyal staff could still carry instructions indirectly. Only total separation would close every path. Charles finally understood. Protecting the future required more than stopping one trust. It required removing every channel through which private influence could survive. No one in the room objected. Before midnight, the council drafted the Royal Household Separation Directive. The council had transformed betrayal into policy, and when morning came, every locked door would tell Camilla exactly how much she had lost. The order became real through small, merciless details. A telephone extension stopped working. A diary meeting disappeared. A driver received a new instruction. Staff members who once waited for Camilla's approval began directing their questions elsewhere. No single change looked dramatic on its own, but together they created a devastating message. The royal machine was continuing, and it no longer required her permission. Camilla watched the palace withdraw from her hour by hour. Her name vanished from trustee lists, collection approvals, residence boards, and confidential briefings. Every crown instruction now had to pass through Charles's private secretary. She could still attend selected events as his wife, but she could no longer represent the monarchy alone, receive official papers, host state-linked receptions, or choose objects from protected collections. Her title remained. Its working power did not. The revised diary hurt most. Camilla's equerry, the officer responsible for helping manage a royal schedule, placed it on her desk and waited. 3 engagements had been reassigned to Sophie. A reception she had planned for months would now be hosted by Anne. Camilla stared at the empty spaces and said the palace had made her invisible without asking her to leave. Charles heard about her reaction at Buckingham Palace. The king was told she had refused lunch and dismissed most of her staff. He reached for the telephone, then stopped. Calling too soon might turn an institutional order into another private negotiation, yet silence made him feel as though he were abandoning her twice. Camilla then approached the secure collection room for a diamond brooch approved weeks earlier. The keeper met her outside and explained that the authorization had been cancelled. She looked past him at the closed door, removed the reference card from her handbag, and tore it once through the center. The damage widened. 2 senior aides offered to resign rather than work under the restrictions. Another secretly gave investigators emails showing that Heritage Circle instructions had traveled through private accounts. The directive also ended payments from the Sovereign Support Reserve, a household fund used for approved official projects. Her charities would now stand alone without implied crown backing. Workers later removed the red dispatch box from Camilla's desk. A dispatch box is a secure container for confidential official papers. She watched it leave, closed the empty desk herself, and turned the key. Nothing confidential remained inside, yet the gesture felt like sealing away the life she had built. Then Charles arrived without aides and asked to speak. By evening, the institution had completed its withdrawal, but the deepest consequence still waited in the room where Charles and Camilla would finally speak, without power standing between them. For the first time since the crisis began, Charles did not arrive as sovereign, and Camilla did not receive him as queen. There were no folders on the table, and no officials beyond the door. He removed his jacket. She poured tea neither of them touched, and the silence felt older than the argument. What happened next did not reverse the order. It changed how they would survive it. Charles returned to Clarence House late and dismissed his protection officer. He asked Camilla to join him in the morning room. The room held memory, but no comfort. He told her the directive would not be withdrawn, softened, or delayed. The evidence had been authenticated, meaning specialists had confirmed it was genuine, and the trustees had acted. Their separation of authority would remain for the entire reign. Camilla finally named the fear. She told Charles that she had imagined William becoming king, and every project linked to her life being removed. The Heritage Circle had been her answer, a private foundation intended to preserve that work beyond the present court. She had not wanted jewels or money. She had wanted proof that her years beside the crown could not be erased by the next household. Charles listened without interrupting. Then he told her the betrayal was not the wish to be remembered, it was the secrecy. He could have heard her fears and created lawful protections, but she had built a structure meant to survive his consent and restrict his son. Love could not excuse using royal authority for private survival. Camilla asked whether he still believed she had married him for position. Charles answered that he did not doubt their relationship. He doubted the choice she had made. That distinction broke through the anger. It allowed them to face the wrongdoing without declaring their history false. Camilla then revealed, through a legal brief prepared that afternoon, that lawyers had drafted a challenge to the trustees' ruling. She told him she would not authorize it. A public fight would force Charles to defend the order against his wife and turn private damage into national humiliation. Camilla removed her gold household badge and placed it between them. Then let this end with us, not with the institution tearing itself apart. Charles covered it with his hand, but did not return it. He promised she would remain his wife, keep her home, receive security, and be treated with dignity. Yet those protections would come from him, not independent crown power. Charles and Camilla had finally accepted the boundary between marriage and monarchy. But beyond Clarence House, the public was about to deliver its own, far less merciful verdict. By sunrise, the decision belonged to everyone. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules, newspapers printed special editions, and crowds began gathering outside royal gates. Yet one image carried more power than every headline: Camilla leaving Clarence House alone, without the red dispatch box, without an official aide, and without the household badge that had once marked her authority. The public understood the message before any palace statement explained it. Buckingham Palace answered with one carefully measured sentence. The statement confirmed that Charles had revised all delegated household authorities following an internal review. Delegated authority meant power temporarily granted by the sovereign rather than owned personally. The wording avoided accusation, but its meaning was unmistakable. Camilla's restrictions were complete, and they were permanent. The London Chronicle struck harder. Its morning edition printed a photograph of the severed access card beneath the headline, "The King Chooses the Crown." Shop windows carried the image before commuters reached work. Broadcasters called the decision the harshest internal limitation placed on a reigning sovereign spouse in modern fictional royal history, focusing on the brutal separation between marriage and monarchy. Crowds gathered at Buckingham Palace by midday. Some praised Charles for protecting the institution. Others held signs demanding dignity for Camilla. One woman placed a white rose at the gates beside a note reading, "Duty should protect the future, not erase the human being." The gesture spread across broadcasts because it captured the conflict no official statement could settle. Charles watched the coverage alone. The king heard commentators praise his strength, while photographs from happier years appeared beside them. When one presenter called the order a personal repudiation, he turned off the television. The phrase ignored the private promise he had made to protect Camilla as his wife, even while denying her royal power. William refused to turn the moment into victory. The Prince of Wales issued a statement supporting his father, while requesting privacy for everyone involved. When an advisor suggested appearing beside Charles, he declined. Standing there might make the future king look triumphant over Camilla's humiliation. 2 days later, Camilla chose to attend the memorial service. She told Charles privately that she would wear no ceremonial jewel from the protected collection and accept no separate procession. At the entrance, the queen consort stepped forward, wearing a simple pearl pin of her own. Charles paused, offered his arm, and she took it. The crowd fell silent before scattered applause began. It restored nothing, but gave the monarchy a path toward closure at last. The world had witnessed the loss of Camilla's authority and the survival of her dignity. Now the monarchy had to decide what lesson would remain after the headlines faded. There was no reversal, no secret compromise, and no ceremonial restoration. Camilla's access remained withdrawn. The altered trust structure was dissolved. The protected collection returned fully to crown control. Yet the final meaning of the crisis could not be measured through keys, titles, or cancelled engagements. It was found in the choice Charles made when love and duty demanded opposite answers, and in the cost every person accepted afterward. The Queen's Heritage Circle surrendered every claim connected to the memorial collection. Its revised beneficiary schedule was declared void, and every object placed in temporary household custody returned to secure royal storage. A beneficiary schedule was the formal record naming who could control or benefit from protected assets. Erasing it closed the path Camilla had tried to preserve and restored full authority to the crown. Camilla remained Charles's wife and could still accompany him at selected family and national events. Yet the queen consort held no independent control over staff, trusts, residences, charitable funds, correspondence, collections, or succession planning. She withdrew from the Circle's board and signed a personal declaration accepting the limits of a consort's authority. A consort is the sovereign's spouse, able to support the monarch but not create permanent power beyond the reign. Charles felt no triumph. The king had protected the institution, but the unquestioning trust within his marriage did not return. He still cared for Camilla, yet affection could no longer erase what secrecy had damaged. Her acceptance prevented the dispute from becoming a public constitutional battle, while his restraint protected her from complete humiliation. William and Anne moved quickly to secure the future. The prince introduced a transparency rule, requiring the heir's office to review any arrangement lasting beyond the current reign. The Princess Royal took charge of the collection's safeguarding committee, ensuring no household could privately redirect protected objects again. Several days later, Charles entered the collection room with Anne and William. He signed the final return entry, set down the pen, and asked the keeper to lock the cabinet. The key turned, the dispute ended. Camilla later told William at a private dinner that the future should not carry her fear of being forgotten. He answered that her service would be remembered, but no legacy could be protected by limiting those who came next. That truth would define the reign. The doors did not reopen, the privileges did not return, and the decision did not soften. But through that irreversible loss, Charles proved that the crown could survive only when duty was stronger than denial. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.